might have made a big mistake back in 2021, and I'm just realizing it now. Or maybe not. Maybe it actually was still the right decision when I go over the pros and cons. Okay, I get it. It probably was the right decision, but then again, maybe it wasn't. I was talking to my little sister the other day. She's an artist, but we have a lot of similar dilemmas and concerns we have to deal with because we both have creative businesses. She did the covers for the Cursed Soul trilogy for me, along with the cutest puzzles you can imagine. Isn't this so cute? Anyway, we were talking the other day about, like, one of the hard things about having a creative business is that you'll come to these points where you have to make a decision, whether it's like a big marketing decision or a big decision about what direction you want to go in. There's certain crossroads where you have to decide, and there's like no way of knowing for sure which direction is going to be the best one. In hindsight, you might think, whoops, maybe that wasn't the best idea. But at the time, you have no idea of knowing. And even if you regret it, you still don't really know if the other path would have been better. And I've kind of been turning over some of this in my mind this week, questioning one of my big crossroads decisions and thinking back on how the situation has evolved since 2021 and wondering, did I make the right decision? But it's kind of too late to go back and try the other path. So I just have to go forward with the decision that I made and do the best I can with it. So I also want to talk about that. Like, sometimes you have to just sit with the decision you made and go with it. And other times you might have the ability to, like, decide if you want to pivot again or try the other path. These are very agonizing moments for me because I'm very careful with my life and my business. I like to make sure that, like, I'm being sensible about every decision I make. I'm not a super impulsive kind of person. And if you have limited financial resources, that can also impact things because a lot of times these types of decisions are based around how you want to allot your financial resources. But over the years, I have had to make so many of these types of decisions, and sometimes I get it right. Sometimes it kind of feels like maybe I got it wrong, and I've just had to learn to take a deep breath and accept that that is all part of the process. Making mistakes and having to adapt to those decisions you made that you regret a little bit, it is going to happen. And it is part of having a business, probably any kind of business, not even just a creative business, but even if you open just a store or something, I would imagine you run into those kinds of things. So I'm going to talk about my big mistake, or is it, and just about making mistakes and decisions in general. One thing I do know, it really helps if you have a really clear head when you're making these types of decisions. Magic Mind is one of my favorite companies that I've worked with, and one of my favorite sponsors because you guys have told me that you've also had good results with it. I usually take one daily to combat the afternoon slump, and what I like best about it is the calm, focused energy it gives me. No jitters like coffee. And one thing about a creative business, you have to be on all the time. The to-do list is a mile long, and I struggle to stay focused. The adaptogens and L-theanine are really great for my anxious, restless brain. Each box, at least when you get it, contains 15 to 30 shots, and with a subscription, you never have to worry about running out of them. I recommend Magic Mind to anyone who is struggling to get things done. And you want to enjoy it, not just get distracted all the time by modern nonsense. There's a 50% off discount on a subscription with my QR code on screen or the link in the description below. And there is absolutely no risk to giving it a shot because they offer a 100-day money-back guarantee, even if you drank your way through the whole case. Now, let's get into my particular mistake. So in 2021, I was still very much writing to market. I was writing paranormal romances, and they were not quite what I wanted to do, especially at that point. I was getting very burned out where I was having a lot of fun in the beginning, even with writing to market. By the time I hit 2021, I had been writing 10 books to market a year for 4 years, and I was getting very tired. I had been writing under my pen name, Lydia Foxglove, because when I originally started, I was a young adult author and I was traditionally published. I needed a pen name because I didn't want kids to read my young adult books at the library or whatever at home and then go see what else I'd done and find racy paranormal romance. But before I'd made this pivot into the pen name, I had written one series, that was the Cursed Soul trilogy, that had spicy scenes, but I published it under my real name. And it was what I think of as Outlander spicy, as in there definitely are sex scenes, but they kind of were grounded in like realistic and hopefully kind of healthy ideas of what a relationship should be like. However, after some years of publishing everything under Lydia Foxlove, I thought, well, those books really would be better to put under my pen name because now I built up this big audience for paranormal and fantasy romance, and they probably would like this book, but they're not finding it because it's under my original name, and that was driving me crazy because this was like the only series of my heart that I had ever published, the only thing that was set in my beloved fantasy world, and I really loved writing it. I loved the characters. So I wanted people to keep discovering it. So I decided to republish it under my new pen name. The audiobooks had sold to Tantor, so they had the rights to the audiobooks and they had control over the covers of the audiobooks. And this was kind of my first hitch because I had to contact Tantor and ask them to change the names on the audiobooks, which they did in a timely fashion as well. So yay for Tantor. The unfortunate thing about this Tantor deal, though, is I also decided that I was going to rewrite the books a little bit because I had learned a lot about writing. Actually, I'd learned a lot about writing in general because I'd been writing so much, but particularly writing romance. And there were some things I just wanted to tweak and fix. Not to change the story in any fundamental way, but just to make them a little better. If you ever write 40 books, you are going to be a better writer at the end of it, even if the books are kind of rushed to market. What I didn't realize about that is if you change too much of your book on Amazon, they will no longer let you keep all of your reviews. And since the audiobooks were recorded based on the original versions, and now they made me release a new version with these revised versions, it would no longer link the audiobook to the paperbacks and ebooks. What a bummer. Thank you to everyone who's still finding those audiobooks. This especially sucked because I had so many reviews on the originals and I've never been able to reclaim that level of reviews. Despite all this, it was a good decision because the books did continue to sell at a better rate than they were before. In fact, I'm sure despite the unlinking, I'm sure Tantor is probably happy I did this because now the books are still selling in audiobook format, like slow but steadily, whereas they were all but dead when they were under my real name. So generally, good job me, good decision, not easy, but I did it and it was a good decision. And then life changed again. Life throws curveballs at you, and sometimes what seemed like a good decision starts to seem like, maybe it wasn't a good decision. As longtime viewers of this channel know, in January of 2022, my father-in-law died and he left us his house full of collectibles. Since I was already very burned out on writing, I decided to take some time off and just sell his collectibles. Generally, this was a good thing because it gave me the chance to build up some savings through selling his collectibles while also taking a break with my poor little overworked paranormal romance churning brain. And by the time I had sold pretty much all of his stuff, it took me 2 years, I had saved up enough money that I decided to make a big pivot. And that's why I'm here on YouTube, because my new strategy was going to be starting a YouTube channel where I would talk about my over a decade of experience in both traditional and indie publishing, support other writers, other creatives, make a cozy little corner of the internet to hopefully form some community, and also on the side, talk about my quirky fantasy world and hopefully sell some of those books. Ever since then, I've pretty much been writing books set in my own fantasy world, and I now have 6 books out. So it started with the Cursed Soul trilogy, and now I also have The Broken Queen, which comes before the Cursed Soul trilogy, and I'm working on the sequel to that. Doll Girl Meets Dead Guy, which comes a little after and is in some ways a bit of a spin-off. I'm also working on another book with those characters, and I came out with The Potion Dealers, which takes place some years afterward. And I'm also working on the next book in that series. And yes, I do need to consolidate some of this. Speaking of mistakes that were made, maybe I'll talk about that in a second. I'm making a lot less money now, but I'm having the time of my life. I am living my dream right now. And so far, I've been able to manage to hang in there financially and keep writing these books that I love so much, that are more what my little fantasy loving heart really wants to do. I'm really not like a romance writer. I am a fantasy writer in the core of my soul, and I love building up a big world, this sweeping multi-generational saga that also has these nice, almost slice of life-ish stories that take place over multiple generations. This world is everything to me, and I'm starting to have some fans for it, which is so exciting and wonderful. But the only problem is that I'm a little embarrassed now that people are reading these books, but when they go to my Amazon page or any of my pages on any of the sites, they also see books with titles like Wed to the Troll King. I know there's a certain segment of the audience that might be interested in my books, and then they might take one look at my page and go, there's no way this is going to be good if this is what she's been writing this whole time. In fact, I might even turn off myself if I was not myself. So I'm a little frustrated by that, because now it's just too late to change it. When I first made this decision to publish the Cursed Soul trilogy, I didn't think I would be able to write any more books in this world, or at least not anytime soon. I had no idea that I was about to come into a collectible collection and have some extra money, have a break, all of that. That just kind of, well, I guess it didn't come from totally out of nowhere, but I had no idea how much stuff my father-in-law actually had, or if we would even be able to get it from his house in Florida. So anyway, things changed a lot from when I first made the decision, and now I've been able to devote so much more time to this real fantasy world, and I just kind of hate that I didn't start another new pen name just for those books. On the other hand, for every reader that I lose, there's also a reader who might come to me through the paranormal romance and the spicy fairy tales and such, and then start to read the books of my heart and like them. And I do have some readers who came into my books through the written to market stuff and are now fans of my Hidden Lands books, because it's not like they're totally different, especially if you read one of my longer, like, fantasy romance series. There's even a few characters that I kind of recycled to a certain extent, so they're not totally out of left field. So that's one of those things where there's no way of knowing if it was a good decision unless I could somehow open another timeline, see how things were going over there. But what I do know is that I'm a little embarrassed about it. Disheveled editing Lydia here. I wanted to be clear that I'm not embarrassed at having written the paranormal romance and the spicy fairy tales and so on. I'm just embarrassed to have them sharing space with my really involved fantasy world, because they're just such a different vibe. I came into them with such a different mindset, so it's just embarrassing having them share space together. I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe I shouldn't feel that way, but I kind of do. But if I was to make that change now, I would have to change the names of 6 books. I'd have to contact Tantor again and ask them to change the titles again, and I would lose every review on all 6 books, and I'd have to set up a whole new name, web domain. I could probably maintain the same mailing lists and stuff, but you know, you have to have a certain infrastructure, like new social media accounts, blah, blah, blah. Those mistakes can also translate, you know, speaking of how I kind of have too many series going on right now. That's another thing that happened as a result of life just changing. So I started writing The Broken Queen as my first attempt to write a Hidden Lands book to market since I'd written the Cursed Soul trilogy. And that was when I thought I still have to write to market. but I'm going to at least try to find a way to write about my own world within market parameters. So I started writing The Broken Queen, gosh, I probably started writing this book like 5 years ago. And because my father-in-law died in the middle of it, and also the book itself turned out very ambitious, it kind of got a little bit away from me. It's my longest book. It took a long time to finish it. It is now done. But in the meantime, I started having more freedom to write what I wanted to write. And life just stressful. Things have happened in my life and in the world politically. Like The Broken Queen has like assault and a lot of plot line about like a woman's agency with her reproductive system and some topics like that I like, they're important and I probably should be wanting to write them. But a part of me, like, I just get so stressed out writing this book because being in the heads of people who are dealing with this while also seeing stories in the news that feel all too pertinent to what they're dealing with, it's heavy. So it's kind of hard to write in this world for me right now. I kind of just want to have fun and escape when I'm writing. So it's much easier to write The Potion Dealers, which is more of like funny and adventure, and character group are also sweet to each other and nobody's getting assaulted. I am extremely committed to finishing all my series, however. Like if it's at all humanly possible, I want to finish them all. I'm just having trouble doing it in the most sensible order. This is not the first time that's happened to me either. I started writing my written to market vampire series, which is my darkest series that I had written in some time, right before the pandemic. I wrote like the first book and maybe half of the second book, or maybe I'd written the whole second book. It doesn't matter. Anyway, it's kind of dark. And then the pandemic hit and I was just like, I'm depressed. I don't want to write about vampires struggling with heavy matters. If you read it, you can probably tell that the third book introduces some more lighthearted side plots, and in fact, a couple of the vampires get hooked on Animal Crossing, so that's like peak pandemic cope there. But I took a break and I wrote Paranormal House Flippers, which is like lighthearted paranormal HGTV romance, because that was where my head was at during the pandemic. I was watching a lot of like stress HGTV and I thought I could write a book about that. But whether any of these things, the pen name confusion, the flip-flopping between series because your mood and life circumstances change, were any of these the best business decisions at the time? Probably not. And sometimes all you can do is just acknowledge that you are human. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to not be able to anticipate how your life is going to go in the next year or 5 years. So sometimes a decision that you made that seemed like the best idea at the time turns out to not be the best idea, and there's nothing you can do about it, but you just have to take a deep breath and say, it's okay. I did the best with the information I had at the time, and I'm going to work with it. It's going to be okay. One thing early in my career, every mistake felt like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the end of it all. But the point of all this is that you can come back from most mistakes as long as they are not extremely egregious. Don't beat yourself up. It's going to happen. Mistakes are kind of another form of failure. Making mistakes means that you're doing things and you're trying. So really, you should be applauding yourself for making mistakes, even though it doesn't really feel like something to get excited about. But you know what? I'm going to say congratulations for making a mistake. It means you're dealing with heavy decisions, you're trying new things, and you're moving forward. Have you guys ever had to face like a pivotal decision? And you know what? It happens in life too. Like deciding where to live, that can be a big one. There's a lot of life decisions where these feelings still apply. Do you ever feel like you made a mistake, and how did you move forward from that? Let me know in the comments. And thank you so much to Magic Mind for sponsoring this video. Make sure to check them out with the link in my description. And if you'd like more from me, I have a Patreon and a Substack that both have quite a bit of free content, as well as a paid tier, which gets you access to 2 bonus videos a month voted on by you guys. And if you'd like to read any of my books, there's a link in the description as well. Thank you so much for being here, and may all your mistakes be manageable. And I'll see you next time. Bye. Are you getting hot? You're getting hot. Yeah. In summer.